My husband slapped me 6 times in front of his mistress and threw me out into a thunderstorm, screaming that I should think about what I did wrong. So, I called the one man in New York who could make his entire world disappear. My father. My name is Vivian Hale, and I came home from a long shift at a grocery store in Queens to find my husband, Grant Whitfield, tangled up on our living room sofa with a woman named Paige, who was wearing a silk dress I had spent 3 months of wages saving up to buy. She did not even bother getting up when she saw me, only pressed closer to Grant and cooed that I was dripping wet and ruining the hardwood floors. And something inside me finally cracked wide open after 5 years of pretending this marriage was worth the sacrifice. I demanded she leave my house, and instead of shame, Grant got in my face and told me a plain, miserable woman like me was not even fit to shine her shoes, that I should apologize to his mistress. When I refused and simply glared at her, he exploded, slapping me across the face 6 times in a row until I tasted blood and collapsed to the floor, then dragged me by the collar to the front door and threw me out into a violent thunderstorm, screaming that I should think about what I had done wrong before I dared come back, begging for forgiveness. The deadbolt clicked shut behind me, and through the door, I could still hear Paige's soft, flirtatious laughter, as if the woman lying in the mud outside meant nothing at all. I sat in the mud outside my own house, soaked through, listening to Paige's fake, concerned, giggling drift through the closed door, and something in me went completely still. 5 years earlier, I had walked away from my family, believing love meant sacrifice, believing a modest life with Grant was worth more than the world I came from. With trembling hands, I pulled out my dying phone and dialed a number I had not used in 5 years, save simply as Dad. And when a deep, startled voice finally answered, I choked out 4 words. Dad, it is me, Vivian. The silence on the line lasted only a second before his voice rose with a fury I could feel through the phone itself, demanding to know who had hurt me and exactly where I was standing. My father, Charles Hale, one of the most powerful real estate developers in New York, told me not to move an inch. That help was 5 minutes away, and within that time, a black Maybach pulled up to the curb, driven by his chief of staff, Marcus, who wrapped me in a warm coat and drove me straight to my childhood estate in Greenwich, a world I had spent 5 years pretending did not exist. My father met me at the front door in his silk robe, and the moment he saw my swollen face, the ruthless businessman the city feared dissolved into a father, barely holding back tears, pulling me into an embrace that felt safer than anything I had known in half a decade. After a hot bath and clean clothes, I sat beside him while he made one phone call that would end the Whitfield family as they knew it, ordering his top investigator to pull a full financial dossier on Grant's family construction business within the R and ordering their lead contractor partner to publicly withdraw from their flagship project that very night under the excuse of critical structural defects. Within hours, the Whitfield family empire began collapsing in real time while they sat down to a celebratory dinner with Paige playing devoted girlfriend, unaware their contractor had just abandoned their biggest project. Their banks had flagged their credit for immediate recall, and rumors of bankruptcy were already spreading through every boardroom in the city. Phones rang without stopping. Vendors demanded payment, and Grant's father, Frank, slammed his fist on the table, demanding to know what had happened to a company that had been perfectly fine that same morning. Paige, sensing an opportunity to cement her position, played the perfect supportive girlfriend for Margaret, Grant's mother, cooking dinner and whispering that she had connections who could help, all while secretly fantasizing about becoming the next lady of a house she assumed would recover within weeks, unaware she herself was $85,000 deep in predatory debt that my father's people were already quietly fast-tracking toward collection judgments. She had no idea the family she was auditioning to marry into was not experiencing a hiccup, but an extinction event, one I had personally requested. The next morning, Grant arrived at his office to find subcontractors blockading the parking garage, screaming that he owed them millions. While inside the building, panicked employees whispered that federal default notices had just arrived from every major lender, demanding $45 million within 72 hours. Then came federal agents and windbreakers, waiting in the lobby, informing him the IRS was opening a full criminal investigation into years of falsified books. Back at the house, process servers, courthouse couriers, and the homeowners association all arrived in succession, burying Margaret and a visibly panicking Paige under a mountain of legal paperwork. That made it impossible to pretend this was anything but total collapse. Frank spent that entire day calling in every favor from decades of networking, only to be met with the same chilling response from every contact, that whoever they had crossed set so far above them that helping the Whitfields now meant drowning alongside them, and that nobody was willing to test that kind of power. He finally understood there was no fixing this, that his family had somehow angered forces entirely beyond his reach. Though neither he nor Grant yet understood the woman behind it had once scrubbed their floors and eaten their leftovers in silence for 5 years. That night I attended a glittering charity gala at the Plaza Hotel on my father's arm, dressed in a custom gown and diamonds, and the entire room turned to whisper about the mysterious daughter Charles Hale had kept out of the public eye for years. Grant, who had scraped together an invitation, hoping to beg some desperate investor for a lifeline, saw me across the ballroom and dropped his champagne glass in shock, recognizing the wife he had beaten and discarded, now radiant on the arm of the single most powerful man in the room. And in that instant, the horrifying truth clicked into place for him. He cornered me in the marble hallway outside the ballroom, begging me to call off whatever had been unleashed on his family, promising he would throw Paige out that night and hand me everything he owned if I would just come home. I looked at him with eyes as cold as the storm he had thrown me into and asked calmly whether he had been thinking about our love while he slapped me 6 times for a mistress, then told him to liquidate whatever assets he had left before his contractors broke more than his windows and walked away without looking back. Grant returned home that night to find Paige waiting to hear about a rescue that would never come. And when he screamed at her that her greed had cost him everything, the fight that erupted was interrupted by sheriff's deputies arriving with a court order to seize every designer bag and piece of jewelry in the house to satisfy her own crushing debt. Frank, watching his son brawl with a debt-ridden mistress while deputies hauled away Chanel bags, collapsed on the staircase, clutching his chest, and Paige finally accepted the gravy train had derailed completely, fleeing into the night with nothing but a broken heel and a cheap purse. Within days, federal agents raided both the Whitfield home and their corporate offices simultaneously, uncovering years of falsified books, tax evasion, and bribery that my father's investigators had quietly handed over on a silver platter. And Grant was arrested on the spot, marched out in handcuffs in front of news cameras while headlines exposed both his crimes and his brutal assault on the wife the public now knew was a Hale. Frank suffered a second heart attack upon hearing the news and slipped into a coma he never woke from, while the family business was liquidated in bankruptcy court down to the last folding chair. I personally purchased their old suburban house for pennies at the foreclosure auction, not to live in it, but simply to own the ground they had once thrown me onto in the mud with part of my inheritance. I launched a foundation providing legal representation, emergency housing, and financial grants for women escaping abusive marriages, turning the worst night of my life into the beginning of purpose for thousands of women who never had a father with a private jet on speed dial, but who deserved to be believed and protected all the same. Years later, I heard Grant had been released from prison, broke, friendless, and doing day labor to support his aging mother, while Paige was still somewhere in the city dodging collectors, her influencer dreams long buried under interest payments, standing in my foundation's office overlooking the Manhattan skyline. One winter afternoon, my father called just to ask what I wanted for dinner, and something in that simple, ordinary question ended me more than any part of the revenge itself had, because it reminded me what it actually felt like to be cherished by someone who would never once raise a hand to me. I realized then that the sweetest revenge was never really the destruction I had unleashed. It was simply the life I had gone on to build without either of them in it at all. A life built on my own worth instead of my own endurance. The woman who once knelt in the mud in a thunderstorm, begging no one to notice her, was gone for good, replaced by someone who finally understood that love should never require 6 slaps and a locked door to prove itself. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the Revenge Tales brings you a brand new story of betrayal and justice every single week, and you will not want to miss what happens next.